Well, hello. Today I'm going to give you my fourth in the series on US death metal. I'm going to go over all new bands I haven't mentioned in the previous three videos. This isn't going to be like numbers 13 through 18 in my faves. This is just albums that really stuck out to me that for whatever reason I didn't mention in these previous videos. First one I want to suggest to you is Pyrexia. Now they're a little bit more well known. They're from the New York death metal scene from the early 90s, and they really typified that sound. I would call it generic, not bland New York death metal. It's that really brutal death metal that I guess kind of later evolved into slam, which I don't like at all. That's more of a newer style. This is more akin to internal bleeding. It's not like Devourment. Devourment I actually consider actual slam. That would be the first actual slam album here. I can't remember. Decapitated. Molesting the Decapitated. But this is more like Cianide, another Texas band, by the way. You know what? Let me give you my top 6 brutal death metal albums. Let's see. I already gave you a couple here. Let's see. How about Prophecy, Foretold, Foreseen. That was from '98. But don't think this was just a Texas thing. Obviously, there was a lot of this going on in the Northeast, whether it was the New York, the Philly, or even like the more Boston area death metal. Their respective hardcore scenes interjected some of those elements into the death metal scene, and that's how you got more of the heavier slam breakdowns and stuff like that. So what was going down south in Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, slamma type death metal kind of mixed with that stuff going on in the Northeast, and that's where slam comes from. So a couple other like proto-slam albums, the better brutal death metal, I would say maybe Viral Load, that's another one. They're from down south also. How about Northeast? Repudiation. I should have put them in my shun band list earlier.
Immolation, incantation, suffocation, malevolent creation. But there are a few other shun bands, TION bands, I should bring to your attention, like Resurrection, Regurgitation, or Retaliation.
Check out their self-titled. It was from 2001, but it was a compilation of their demos from the 90s. Let's see. They were from New York, right? Yeah. Let's see. Massachusetts band. How about Scattered Remnants? They released Destined to Fail. And how about another Massachusetts? There's got to be Eternal Suffering. They released Drowning in a Tragedy. And do I need one more? I don't remember how much we're up to. How about Dehumanized? Prophecies, Foretold. This is some heavy-ass New York death metal. I think all the last 3 I mentioned came out in '98. Well, it was towards the end of the '90s there. You know who else I should mention is from New York. This is like proto-slam. Before.
You mean in the before time? In the long ago?
But you could see the elements of it developing in Afterbirth's demo. That was way back. I want to say '94. Check that out. It was ahead of its time. But I did more than 6, didn't I? Oh, shit. Sorry. I'm way off track. I haven't even given you an example of Pyrexia yet. Jeez. All right. Pyrexia, right here. Now, while I suggest that as the archetype of that early 90s New York death metal style, I will suggest this as the archetype of the early 90s Chicago area death metal. That scene in the upper Midwest tended to inject a lot of elements of doom that were more slow, plodding, paced music. For example, Dusk, or maybe November's Doom. This is different than either of those bands, obviously. You know what? Check it out. Let me know what you think. Alright, heading back over to New York, but this is a much thrashier take on death metal. I would call this death thrash. This is that good intersection between the two. Revenant, from 91. They have a lot of Lovecraftian stories in the lyrics here. This unfortunately was their only album, but a really good example of death thrash. Not so much the New York style per se, but definitely a New York style. Check it out. Now, I haven't mentioned the major hotspot during this time period yet, Florida. Now, what I would suggest is the archetype of Floridian death metal at this time would be the sounds found on Brutality's album Screams of Anguish from '93. This is, you know what I mean by technical, melodic, with a bit of brutality. Check it out. Right, this one is back in Chicago here. I'm going to suggest to you Oppressor. Now, this is technical death metal, with the heaviness that you might associate typically with the New York sound. Now, I know Chicago did have a lot of heavy-ass shit, like Jungle Rot, Broken Hope. I mentioned both of those in previous videos, so maybe Flesh Grind. Who else? How about Exploding Zombies? They're from the upper Midwest, kind of that same area there. Michigan, Ohio. You had Gutted from Minnesota, Crimson Thorns. So maybe throughout the Midwest there was this pretty heavy ass death metal going on also. But the interludes on this Oppressor album are what kind of make it a little bit different, set it apart. They're very good. I like how it breaks up the album. It was probably something very unique at the time. I honestly can't think of anybody else doing this. In the comments, point out how I'm wrong. I would love to hear it. But in the meantime, check out Oppressor. All right, and the final standout band that I haven't mentioned in the previous videos yet, for whatever reason, that I want to make sure that you're well aware of. Sadistic Intent, this is a LA band. Check out Resurrection.
Hey, Resurrection! That's what my dad needs!
This EP was released in '94. It's very catchy with, I don't know, it gives me an overarching feeling of dread when I listen to it. The whole atmosphere of this album is what makes it great. I love the feeling that some of the early death metal gives me. This is one of those examples that really do it well. A couple brothers in this band, just like Gutted, the band that I mentioned a couple minutes ago from Ohio. I should do a video on metal bands, or at least extreme metal bands with brothers in them, because it seems to come up a lot. I think you need a good brother when you're getting into metal. I think you both challenge each other to like explore more, or whatever it was. I don't know, there was a bit of one-upmanship with my brother and I always, but I think that's typical in a brother relationship. And so like sharing the new bands that you found, and each going down a kind of separate path, and then coming back. It's fun having a brother when you're exploring metal when you're a kid. Anyway, here, it's Sadistic Intent. That first. All right, so I realize I kind of ran through all those kind of quickly after stumbling across the first entry. I stuck another top 6 list in there somehow. So anyway, I gave you 2 top 6 lists. So I'm going to round it out with another top 6 list real quick here. 3 6s. You know where I'm going with this. Anywho, I'm going to give you 6 more bands I haven't mentioned in any of the previous videos yet. Point out an album that I think you should check out. All from the 90s, all from the U.S. I'm going to start over in Omaha, Nebraska, of all places, gave us a band called Xenomorph. Check out their album from 1995. This is progressive tech thrashy death for fans of Time Ghoul. So I don't know if this is a Midwest thing, Time Ghoul being a St. Louis band. It's about an 8-hour drive away, so I don't think there were any like interchanges in the scene so much. The Midwest is pretty vast. Imperial Regimes. Then I'm going to move on all the way over to Rhode Island, that tiny little shitty state. Check out a band called Head Rot. Everybody knows Vital Remains is from Rhode Island, but they also have Head Rot. This is from '92, very heavy. It's borderline death grind, but it's on this side of death metal, so I'm going to include it here. Then what else? I did see them live once. I want to mention that. Let's see, Deteriorate. From '93, a fantastic album. This band's from Philly. I really like that Philly sound. There's a lot going on there. There's still some good stuff coming out of Philly, so that's an area that seems to get not nearly as mentioned as much as Florida and New York and other places like that. Even Chicago seems to get more talked about than the death metal scene from Philly. But check out Philly bands. It's like more of a darker take on the New York style is how I would call it. Let's see. Let's round this out with the theme. The next 3 bands that I want to praise are going to all be satanic. They praise the adversary. So how about Diabolic with Supreme Evil from '98? That's their best, but I know they continue to put out a lot of material to this day. How about Acheron? They've been around for a while. Hail Victory from '94. This was a re-release with, I don't know, I like the intro parts, and some people say that detracts from the whole album, how they done it. They're a Floridian death metal band that's been around since maybe '88 or so. Vincent Crowley, the vocalist, he's also known for being outspoken and involved in other extracurriculars, let's say. And then one more. We'll go back to Philly. Satanus, Armies of Charon in 1997. It's really got that Philly sound that you don't want to miss. Dig into that Philly sound. You know what? Next video, I'm going to give you one more, and I think I've exhausted my knowledge of U.S. death metal at that point. So the theme on the next one, I'm going to give you bands, death metal bands from the U.S. from the 90s with goofier names. Maybe the name even kind of prevented me from checking them out for a while just because I thought the name was a little too absurd, or maybe I just expected something different based on their name. So, I don't know. Thanks for sticking with me this far in my death metal series. So, got one more coming up. So, a total of 5 videos in this series on U.S. death metal from the 90s. There are so many hidden gems in here, and I hope you check out the whole series and let me know anything that I turned you on to or anything that I missed. And at the very end of this series, I will provide you with a link that has a list with all the bands that I mentioned, and probably a few more that, for whatever reason, I didn't interject into these videos. A lot of hidden gems there. Thank you very much.